Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective here on the Bleacher Report app. It is Longhorn Weekly. Lot to discuss this week off of losing our number one ranking to the Georgia Bulldogs as they came into Austin and handled business against our beloved Texas Longhorns 30-15. Georgia really showing dominance and physicality in the first half on both sides of the ball, and our offense didn't respond. So we're going to talk about the offense, Texas quarterbacks, a big game against Vanderbilt coming up. Vanderbilt, which is now ranked 25th in the country. Really fun player in Diego Pavia, who we will be facing, running triple option concepts. It's prime football season, right? Texas with 5 games left in the season. Everything they want still in front of them. And I think some of the sky is falling aspect has gone away since Saturday night, where I had to talk a lot of people off the ledge. But we'll get into a bunch of talking points that I want to highlight on today. If you're watching here on Bleacher Report, please participate in the chat. Feel free to ask questions as we go along the various topics. And if you are watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe. It helps us grow the platform, the channel here at Fanatic Perspective. So I want to start off with, let's a lot of people say, let's keep the main thing. The main thing is this game coming up against Vanderbilt, the biggest game of Quinn Ewers' career. Considering the first time in his career he's been benched, the poor performance, the questions of his health, the questions of whether or not he's the best choice to lead this team, or is it one Arch Manning? These are legitimate questions that have now occurred where we were so sure. I was so sure, earlier this year against Michigan, where he was a Heisman frontrunner, not just a Heisman frontrunner, but in the discussion for the first overall pick in the draft, in the discussion for a solidified, at least first round pick, with the prowess he came out of high school when he went to Ohio State and eventually transferred to Texas, the development within this Steve Sarkisian system, him leading Texas to the college football playoff last year, the 4-team college football playoff last year. Quinn Ewers has a resume. As polarizing it's become because of the inconsistencies and the health challenges throughout his career, we're now facing the same question here in year 3 at Texas. So this game coming up against Vanderbilt, because of what occurred last week against Georgia, the struggles, the questions about toughness. Hey, when people start seeing you throwing off your back foot, when people start seeing you doing the fadeaway jumpers, avoiding contact, standing and delivering in the pocket, Georgia's running too high, tight man coverage, you're having to throw through NFL windows, you don't have pockets that are lasting 5 and 6 and 7 seconds, you got to make it happen, right? And so the concerns are definitely there. Now, here's the good news, and here's why I think Quinn will respond on Saturday. Number one, the opponent. Vanderbilt is going to be very physical as well. They are a very feisty team. We know they went and upset, at the time, number 1 ranked Alabama. We've now seen what has happened to Alabama since, but Vanderbilt has been good all year long. Very formidable opponent. There's a reason why they're ranked 25th, and they currently have the same record in the SEC as Texas. So coming into this game, the challenge is there, but they don't have the personnel that Georgia had with a Jalen Walker, a Michael Williams, a Malachi Starks to deploy what Georgia did at all 3 levels of their defense, running a lot of 2-man under, 2 high safeties, man coverage underneath, and getting home and extreme pressure with 4 guys up front. They don't have that type of crazy personnel. And honestly, Georgia might be the only team in the country, or at least one of maybe 2 or 3 teams, that can deploy such a scheme against the personnel that Texas has and box them or give them the problems that they did, especially when Texas on their own elects not to run the football between the tackles. So looking at that, just off of there, if I'm looking at Quinn Ewers to have a bounce back game, what needs to happen? He's going to need his teammates. Football's a team sport. And when the quarterback's struggling or there's some inconsistencies there, everybody else can help and chip in. Coaches, offensive line, pass catchers, running backs. Where can the coaches help? Well, the coaches can make sure that we have a balanced ratio and making sure that, hey, we're calling some high percentage throws, some rhythm throws. You know your guy. What does it take to get him into rhythm, right? And I think Steve Sarkisian has a pretty good sense of that. You know, from a run game perspective, he's going to need balance. So, hey, our backs, not just helping him out in pass pro, making sure we're identifying the right guys, as Vanderbilt will probably look to get exotic up front and send various pressures, knowing the lack of mobility from Quinn, right? So, hey, that's one area you can help if you're a running back. But another area is toting that rock, establishing the run game so that play action matters. If you look at last week in the Georgia game, Georgia did not respect Texas's play action because they, A, did not establish the run, and B, Texas typically throws and is on par of throwing to set up the run. So Georgia understanding Texas's tendencies keyed in on those things, especially in the first half. You saw a lot of guys on their way to the quarterback bypass the running back completely. Or they would attach themselves to the running back knowing a screen was coming back the other way. You saw that several times throughout the Texas-Georgia game. So Texas is going to have to be mindful of that. Coaches, backs, offensive line, opening up those holes. Offensive line, how can they help? Getting that mentality of physicality. We played off our back foot, and we got our butts whooped last week, offensive line. We were either going sideways or we were going backwards. Very rarely were we going forward. Going forward needs to be the theme of the week. That needs to be the approach that they have against this opponent. I want to see stuff like double teams, combo blocks, getting downhill, even if it is to the perimeter. Some of our toss sweep stuff where we're pulling guards, but we're immediately getting downhill, hands-on man, and being physical in the run game and moving people. If Texas wants to talk about Pancake Factory, they want to toot their horn about big humans and this offensive line has played very well this season. Okay, so this isn't a full indictment on them, but this is just getting back to what, grinding out what we do. A lot of people will talk about, hey, well, Texas are these running back injuries that they had at the beginning of the season, losing C.J. Baxter, losing Christian Clark. Is that coming back to bite Texas? Well, look no further than the OU game, right? A couple weeks ago, where we're cranking out explosive runs. Look at the Michigan game where Jarrett Gibson was involved. This is where the staff can't forget about guys, and they need to extend some second chances to some guys to make sure that they establish that balance and that integrity at the line of scrimmage. What do I mean by that? Jarrett Gibson had a fumble at one point. Somehow he gets in the doghouse. He's not getting carries. Jaden Blue had a couple fumbles. The Mississippi State game was rough. We all know that. All of a sudden, he's in the doghouse from a run perspective. Now, Jaden Blue had a really good game last week against Georgia, 7 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown through the air, and was really good, in the open field. Looked like Jaden Blue, quite frankly, to me. But he received 0 carries. That's a guy who was our starting running back this year. 0 carries. If I'm Steve Sarkisian, I'm looking to establish my guys in between the tackles, my 2 guys in between tackles, or really 3. Trey Wisner can run between the tackles. He's smaller, but that's not an excuse not to do it, right? So between Quintravian Wisner, Jaden Blue, and Jarrett Gibson, we've got to establish a physical downhill mentality of moving people off the line of scrimmage and getting into second and third and manageables and makeables. That will, by proxy, make Quinn Ewers more comfortable and make it really easy for him to execute. Make the game easy for him. I know it sounds crazy that we're talking like this, but when a player's in a slump, no matter how old or experienced they are, sometimes they just need a little bit of these things to get them going again. We've seen Quinn need this before, and then we've also seen where he's gotten back into rhythm i.e. the Big 12 championship game last year against Oklahoma State, where he looked like himself. He finally was healthy, and he's willing to deal and throwing the ball all over the field, and he's surgical. That's the only way I can see Texas getting Quinn and really this offense back in sync is through the physicality of the run game. That has to be an emphasis this week. Now, here's the thing. How much of a leash do you give Quinn Ewers? We can't tolerate bad quarterback play. We can't tolerate any bad play. We're a team trying to win a national championship. We're a team trying to win the SEC championship. So if performance is not there and he is not healthy and he's not showing that he can protect himself, and it's still a struggle in Nashville against an opponent like Vanderbilt, again, a good opponent, but it's not Georgia, then Arch Manning going to have to play. And he's going to have to get in there and use his legs. And I'd rather learn on the fly with somebody that's healthy and can push the ball down the field, and then somebody that can't protect themselves and they're holding the ball and they're just not seeing the field. I don't think that will be I don't think we'll get to that point, and I hope we don't. I want Quinn to go out there and get back on pace, get back on rhythm, and have that get back game. This is why the fact that we're having this conversation right now is why this is the most important game of his career going forward. Yes, Alabama was big. All these, I said before, Quinn has the resume. But right now, as Chris alluded to, Chris Simpkins on our Unfiltered Longhorn Talk chat yesterday, one guy's going backwards, the rest of the team's going forward, right? I need everybody, especially my leader, my quarterback, my general, going forward. So, very, very critical that we emphasize that this week against an opponent in Vanderbilt. Now, we look back at the Georgia game. There was a lot of good. There was a lot of good takeaways. I understand we didn't get off to the start we wanted. A lot of mistakes, a lot of things to clean up. The defense and the heart and soul of this team, they answered, and they proved, in my opinion, that not only are they one of the best defenses in the country, but they showed how great they can be in that secondary, holding Carson Beck with no touchdown passes, under 200 yards passing, multiple turnovers, and the film study, the awareness, the senior laden guys back there, get well soon, Andrew Makuba, who we should have back soon. I don't expect him to play versus Vanderbilt, but we do expect to have Andrew back soon. He had an amazing interception, the first one against Carson Beck. But when you look at a guy like a Jahdae Barron, I think he is right there right now in the running for the Thorpe Award. He moved over to corner. He's healthy this year. He's a guy that came back to Texas. You want to talk about the pressure on Quinn? There's pressure on everybody on this team. There's pressure on Jahdae Barron coming back to Texas this offseason, knowing he probably was, could have gone middle of the draft in 2024 and made some money and been a pro already. But hey, I want to get my stock up. I know I'm a better football player than this. I know I can help the team play field corner. And he has been every bit as advertised, including the leadership element. Michael Taft, Andrew Makuba, our Central Texas gang there, they are doing a incredible job. And I know that they're going to have their hands full with Mr. Diego Pavia of Vanderbilt this week, number 2, who's a bad, bad man and the trigger man of this triple option attack. But they have shown me that competitive spirit, that fight, married even with my defensive line. I was, I know it wasn't perfect. Trevor Etienne got his in the run game, and Georgia was able to do some things. But in critical downs, situationally, I saw something from Jermaine Lole. I saw something from Alfred Collins. I saw more than something from Barron Sorrell, who had an outstanding game at defensive end. Outstanding game. So those guys deserve their flowers and credit going up against NFL offensive linemen, guys that are going to be playing on Sundays and holding down their own in the fort and the trenches down there. There's this Texas defense is for real. And I think that's one of the reasons why Texas will have success and a very tough matchup versus Diego in a scheme where they're gonna option you and do all these things, and they're gonna pull the ball out and have misdirection and then get vertical and try to have those explosive plays downfield. And Diego's been hitting on them, as well as all of the quarterback run game, right? So being prepared for those elements and understanding we are going to have to be disciplined and have to maintain good eyes and good keys and play as a team. Listening to Michael Williams and Jalen Walker and their Players Lounge podcast this week, one of the things they talked about when attacking Texas, because there's a lot as Texas fans we can learn from Georgia, just like Georgia learned from Bama and how high level Bama played them, and they learned, hey, we got to execute, we got to practice at a certain level. Well, one of the coolest things here is Jalen Walker and Michael Williams were talking about rushing as a unit. Everything they did, they said they did as a team. When they talked about the secondary, they talked about it in the context of team ball. That's how Texas is going to have to play against this attack that Vanderbilt's going to be deploying out there. Because that's the other element that Quinn Ewers is going to need, is to know that, hey, I'm not here in a shootout and all of a sudden I got to win the game. And I know it sounds like I'm handling him with kid gloves right now, but damn it, that's what it's going to require for right now until he's back to where he needs to be. So the defense is going to have to continue to do their part. Emphasis on continue. Okay. But we are dealing with a different animal here than what we saw against Georgia. It's more of a traditional approach. They're going to spread you out, but they're going to run modern passing concepts, things that we typically see and deploy, some of which we also deploy in Steve Sarkisian's scheme with some of the positional versatility and personnel versatility. So just things to be mindful of. Now, if we look at the tail of the tape from a statistical standpoint, one of the things I wanted to show here was the actual, just stats so far, right? So this Texas defense, I'm not exaggerating about how good they've been. Now the offense is still highly ranked, but those numbers have come down immensely because of the Georgia game. Texas was actually before the Georgia game was, I believe, at 45 points per game, so they're down to 39. But defensively, still allowing less than 10 points per game, allowing less than 4 yards per play, 3.6 yards per play is outstanding. Those first four metrics on the defense, they are number one in the country. They are the best in the country. Opponent red zone scoring, outstanding job. We want to talk about red zone defense. Look at the takeaways they got in the Georgia game. Look at the takeaways they got, right? So just, even against the rush, and the rush numbers aren't insane. We were a top 3 rush defense last year, but the fact that you can have a Tavondre Sweat and a Byron Murphy go to the draft, and the guys that have come in, whether it's the portal or guys like Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, who have stepped up and grown up within the program, as well as mainstays like Barron Sorrell and Ethan Burke, they're still holding it down at a very high level, right? So these are encouraging numbers when you really look at what they're giving up in the pass game, which is elite stuff, right? So 4.5 yards per pass. You look at the opponent interception percentage thrown, their top 10 passing yards per game allowed, 133. Okay. Now, yes, that does factor in level of opponent, blah, 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 a whole bit. But again, guys, we held Carson Beck below 200 yards passing. Coming into the Texas game, he had back-to-back weeks where he had thrown for over 400 yards. Coming into the Texas game, he had back-to-back weeks where he had thrown for over 400 yards. So the efficiency that we are getting on the defensive side of the ball is tremendous. Now, on the offensive side, we want to get this going up, right? We want to get some of those explosive runs like we saw in the OU game from Kutravian Wisner, but also the volume, right? I mean, we're still pretty balanced. 49% run call to 50% pass call. That's to me, that's where we want to be. But before this game, I think we'd only been sacked. Quarterback had only been sacked maybe a couple times. So giving up 7 sacks is never great. That's some QB, some line. But getting the efficiency back there is very important as well. And I believe, again, with the kind of reduction of talent of who we're playing, I think Quinn Ewers is going to be okay and getting back to at least, playing better than he did against OU and certainly better than Georgia, right? So if we get the performance where he was playing up through really UTSA, Texas is fine. Texas is fine. And I do also want to acknowledge one other thing. I was wrong about the requirement to beat Texas. I said that Texas could only really lose if it had been behind elite quarterback play. And Georgia did not have elite quarterback play last week, and they beat us. They beat us as a team. And I just want to add, Texas is very beatable. Everybody in college football is beatable, including Oregon. They're going to have a tough battle this week against Illinois. We'll see. But I want to add that Texas is, offense can also, if they have another one of those games, they're definitely beatable. Definitely beatable, where they are not physical, things that are uncharacteristic, right? So let's just be mindful of that, because before that, they hadn't really shown, those issues. We'd known Quinn was rusty, but the Texas offensive line had not shown the lack of physicality and the lack of go forward, the lack of punch, right? So let that be a very big key for this week, right? Again, folks here watching on Bleacher Report, talk to me in chat. Let me know what you think as you're watching. Is this the biggest game of Quinn Ewers' career, or do you disagree? I'll actually put that in the poll, because to me, I think there's a lot at stake. I mean, it's just, um, the NFL considerations, the, the legacy of what you've done in Texas. Big Texas fan. What stuff matters? Wanting to win, falling a game short of the national championship last year, right? All these things are critical. All right, let's type this out here. Is this Vandy game the biggest of Quinn Ewers' career? Hey guys, let me know, because I'm curious. All right, so we got the poll up there. Now, as we kind of round up here, I know we have a little bit of time left. The Texas special teams unit, which isn't bad. It's not bad. But I do think that as we look at the next 5 games, Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Texas A&M, our special teams is going to have to be better. Right now, we have an issue with the punter, Michael Kern. We have, I believe, a walk-on kicking, the injury issue with Michael Kern. Bert's been a little shaky this year. And then it seems as though our coverage teams have been solid, but we haven't been that just harass you. Oh my God, they're going to block a punter, get really, really close type team. We've got a couple hands on some balls this year, but nothing crazy. And our return games are heavily penalized. And these are hitting yards that people don't see in a game. That Matthew Golden penalty where he returns the ball out of his own end zone, we go return left, and he gets it inside the 25-yard line of Georgia, for that to be called back because of a hold that occurs around the 15-yard line. I mean, that's like a 75-yard penalty. That's worse than pass interference. There's no other penalty you can get that's worse than that. So, and then on the other side, Georgia has freaking Michael Dixon punting for them, who's blasting the ball and flipping the field every which way. So Texas is going to have to be mindful of these things, of where some of that hidden yardage is, setting up some of those big plays. That was a big deal in the OU game. That's how this Bolden punt return. But also ball security, doing a good job of understanding when to take chances and when to fall back and have some common sense and just field the ball and let us fight another day. These are all very, 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 very critical, important things that guys need to lock back in. And I will say this: Texas headspace. I think Texas is in a good headspace. Listening to Michael Taft this week talk about looking in the mirror. So many guys on the team, Jade Barron, talking about looking in the mirror, taking accountability, not pointing the finger. And honestly, it's less what they're saying, it's more their demeanor and the energy. I still see confidence. I still see sureness. I still see, hey, we know what we need to do. We do need to get back to the drawing board. We do have some things to learn, right? But if Georgia can fight back and get back in the season right just like that, so can we. And guess what? When we see those guys again, we'll be ready and have something for them, because we are going to have to probably go through them, whether it's the SEC championship game or in the playoffs. That was round one. And maybe Sark tilted back a little bit, said, hey, I'm obviously I'm trying to win the football game and whatnot, but I'm not going to empty the bag in terms of everything I can do against such an opponent. Well, maybe, and I could be wrong, because he did bench Quinn. He did go to certain tactics to try to get this team going and winning. I'm not implying anything other than that. Please listen up. However, it is important to note some of the things that Georgia keyed in on: wide zone keys, screen keys, things that we run where it's like typically that guy's not supposed to be there. Those will get seen on film if we play again. And Sark will bury you on the counter side if some of those things play out the same way. So I am interested to see if there's another chess match between Steve Sarkisian and Kirby Smart and his defensive brain trust, led by Glenn Schumann, T-Rob, and Will Muschamp. Right? So, no, but good. I was at the game this past weekend. Amazing football environment. It was the biggest football game I've ever attended. I was talking with Tran. We talked about LSU 2019. We talked about Bama 2022. But this was definitely the biggest game I've ever physically, in terms of the level of opponent, the celebrities in the building, the atmosphere at Texas. The atmosphere at DKR was second to none. Absolutely wild. The student thing is unfortunate that they do stuff on the field. It is what it is. Texas is dealing with that, and punishments are being rendered. You never want to see that happen. But this Texas team looks it's interesting. It's interesting with how that environment was. It was one of the coolest environments that I've been around. I mean, and when I say Texas A&M, this program, what they've built up, right? The drone show, just everything that transpired was incredible. Really, really was. I got my man in here. Curious to see how Quinn plays with the pressure of knowing if he gets benched again, he'll likely. Hey, you know what? You got to go out there and have fun and rip it. I hate, that's where sports psychology. So a few things here with this comment, right? Because I do want to address it. Few things. The noise in the locker room has to be kept out. Okay. Nobody is, we may be saying it out here, it may be being said on social media, Twitter, and all that. That can't be the mentality in the locker room. Okay. So that has to be blocked out. Number one. Number two, everybody has pressure on them to perform, if you really think about it, in terms of if you don't, you're off. It's a championship team. So it is going to be critical, very, very, very critical for performance and demanding that. That's what Quinn should be demanding of himself. That's what Sark should be demanding of Quinn. And he should kind of look at Arch and look over his shoulder and say, hey, he struggled too. He didn't pull the trigger last week either. He struggled through his reads as well. So, maybe that gets the little extra pep in his step to say, okay, I'm okay. Let's do this. I mean, he did have a good third quarter against Georgia where he was effective and led us to our 2 touchdown drives and put up a bulk of his numbers in that third quarter. But we need to see the Quinn Ewers that we saw go to Tuscaloosa that was fearful. I'm sorry, that was fearless. That was fearless. That was in the camera. This is what we on, right? Throwing those moon balls and showing off the arm talent and stepping into stuff and playing with confidence. That's what we need to see. That's what he should want to see for himself, right? But this is a championship team and playing at a high level sport in the biggest conference. There's going to be pressure, and you have a Manning behind you, which we already know what that is. And they can't use the injury thing. I mean, Sark's not. Correct me if I'm wrong. A, Quinn's not on the injury report. B, Sark is saying he should be good. He said he doesn't know if he's 100%, but he should be good. So if the coach is going to show that type of body language, and that's what they're going to say from the microphone, then who are we to question? We got to take it at face value because that's what you said. We got to take that at face value because that's what you said, right? You didn't. I didn't. It's not like he's being undiagnosed and we're like, man, something looks wrong with him. Somebody should check that out. That's not the case. So it is 5:40. It is time for me to bounce. But let me know what you think about this matchup coming up. Like I said before, is this the biggest game of Quinn Ewers' collegiate career? I think it is. I think it's a crossroads that he's reached where he knows either to do his thing and get back on track and make some of that money back that he may have lost from a stock perspective, or if it's time to see the way for the next young man, Arch Manning. But, we're now at an uncomfortable place that we really, I don't think, wanted to be all year. Now we're here. And this is where this team needs to show some fight, show some claw, and get back out of that hole. It's the only way we're going to get out of that. So please be mindful of that. Again, if you are watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe the whole bit. If you're watching here on the Bleacher Report, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Always welcome to feedback. Love you guys. And remember, horns always up. Hook 'em.